Doctor, as I said, the group is young set of people, high achievers, high energy. Bankers are known to be heartless people, but still we are celebrating the World Heart Day, and we want to take care of our heart and prove to the world that we also have heart, and we work with everybody with a great heart. So over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Ajit. Thank you, Sneha, for organizing everything, and thanks to Ajay, who has, in some ways, been our mentor. Ajit, thank you very much for the introduction, and I do wish I'll get a recording of this, then I can play it to my wife.
Definitely, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I have tried to, I have got a presentation, and I have tried to cover the questions which I think are relevant. Today is World Heart Day, and every year they celebrate World Heart Day on the last Sunday of September. Although 29 September is mentioned as the day, as the World Heart Day, and every year there is a theme. This year the theme is connecting through the heart, and that is relevant because of COVID. However, this year the theme in India is heart attack in the young, and that is the topic that Ajit and Ajay wanted me to discuss. So we are going to look at heart attacks in the young. So I will share the screen. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah. So we start with this slide of football field where a talented footballer suffered a heart scare on the pitch in Euro 2020. And fortunately, Eriksson survived the scare, and he has recovered from this. And we have several cases where people do get heart attacks and they do manage to survive. So that is the positivity in today's lecture, that even if a heart attack happens, although we must try our level best to prevent it, it is not the end of the world, and that you can survive a heart attack. And even if it's a major heart attack, we can operate on patients, we can do angioplasty on patients, and we can have a good long-term outcome. Let us look at the young Indians who had heart attacks. NASSCOM Chief Devang Mehta at the age 39, Rudratej Singh, BMW India, age 46, Raj Kaushal, age 50. Saif Ali Khan survived the heart attack. He had it when he was around 42. Siddharth Shukla, we all know, 41. Sanjeev Kumar, the famous actor, 47. And Vinod Mehra, also an actor, 45. So Indians do have a nasty history. And let us go into the reasons why Indians have this propensity to have heart attacks at a much younger age group than the American or British counterparts. Well, at the outset, there is more incidence of diabetes, which is partly genetic and partly our penchant for a high carbohydrate diet, sedentary lifestyle, less sport, more tobacco chewing and smoking. For every 1 or 2 smokers who are obvious, there are 4 or 5 people who chew tobacco, which is a particular problem in India, and much less medical checkups. And that is reflected in the type of insurance cover that we have. most insurance companies cover only hospitalization. Very few insurance companies have started covering outpatient treatment. So no insurance company is concentrating on how not to have heart attacks or how not to have major illnesses. So this is something that we must start to look at. So let us first look at how heart attacks occur. Now, this is the normal blood vessel wall. And if you see this blood vessel wall, it is quite smooth from the inside. So as long as the blood vessel wall is smooth, it is safe. Here we see a cholesterol deposit just under what we call the intima or the innermost layer of the heart. When this atherosclerosis goes beyond a point and you get a plaque rupture, the intima is breached. Once the intima is breached, a set of problems sets in. Very quickly, after breach of the intima, platelets begin to aggregate on top of the breach, and very soon this forms a clot. Now, once this clot is formed, the artery gets blocked completely. The clot may dissolve on its own or with the help of clot busters, in which case you would get a minor heart attack, sometimes which passes off as acidity. You often have people who say, I had a little epigastric pain or pain in the chest. I took some soda, I thought it was acidity, and it went away. So it could be that there was this small clot, and this clot just passed away, leaving a small heart attack. However, if this clot does not disappear and this clot fibroses, then you get a complete blockage and a major heart attack. So what should we do if a patient has got a bad heart attack? Should we despair? The answer is no. We can operate on a patient even if the patient has had a heart attack and save his life. So this is what an angioplasty looks like. This is the angioplasty catheter, which goes into the plaque. It removes the clot. We can suck out the clot, and then it opens out the blockage and puts in the stent. The next question is, what if stenting is not possible? If stenting is not possible, we can also do bypass surgery in an acute myocardial infarction situation. Initially, people used to not operate upon patients in acute myocardial infarction situation, but now with the development of beating heart surgery, one can even operate in a acute myocardial infarction setting and save the patient's life. So this is yet another patient who had a completely blocked artery. We operated upon him, and this is the atheroma or the cholesterol block. The entire artery was blocked. We have removed the entire blocked artery and recanalized the vessel, and the patient can now lead a normal life. So this operation was done. Yeah, this operation was done 9 years ago, and the patient. This is.
Sorry. Sorry. Can I request everybody to go on mute, please? Somebody else. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So this is yet another situation of an acute myocardial infarction. Unfortunately, did not have a very good outcome. Here, we are not sure about the cause of the heart attack. But these are the new causes of heart attack. use of anabolic steroids, use of whey protein can lead to accelerated atherosclerosis. And this is one of the newer causes of the myocardial infarction, particularly amongst young, fit people who are in the show business and who do need to demonstrate their physical abilities. Sadly, this is another fact of life. Up to 25% of non-fatal heart attacks today are due to cocaine use. And this sadly is increasing in the West. Although it has not surfaced so much in India, but this is also a reality of life, and we must keep our eyes open to this. So what does cocaine do? Cocaine is a very strong vasoconstrictor, so it compresses the arteries. In fact, that is responsible for the kick because it compresses the arteries to the brain. It numbs the brain and gives the kick, but it also compresses the arteries of the heart and it can lead to a heart attack. So how to prevent the occurrence of a heart attack? We have seen that if a heart attack develops, we should initially give clot busters and rush the patient to the hospital. Here we can perform surgery and remove the clot. We can open the artery. But the important thing is to act before the heart attack occurs. So what can we do to prevent the occurrence of a heart attack? So does a routine health checkup help? The answer is yes. It identifies problems at an early stage. It gives us an action plan to solve the specific problems. The next question, can a health checkup miss problems? Sadly, yes. In 1 to 2% of cases, a complete health checkup may yet miss or fail to identify the specific problem in 1 to 2% of the cases, which is why we advise health checkup every year. Why do we neglect the earliest signs of heart disease? Medically, because 40 to 60% blockage can occur in the coronary arteries without there being any symptoms. And socially, because we have got a fatalistic attitude to life. We think that if I do a checkup, then the doctors will find some blockage and I will have to get it treated. So better the unknown devil than something that I have to treat. So that sadly results in silent heart attacks, and these silent heart attacks are life-threatening. How do we diagnose a heart attack? First, from typical symptoms, severe chest pain, severe sweating, feeling of acidity or gas or burning in the epigastric region, heavy weight on the chest, and difficulty in breathing. So these are the classic signs of angina or heart attack. How do you confirm the diagnosis of a heart attack? When 2 of the following 3 are present, either classical symptoms or changes on the cardiogram, which is called the ECG, or some people call it the EKG, and enzyme changes. That means blood tests which show heart damage. So nowadays, if there is no clear-cut heart attack, we don't label the patient normal, but we call it an acute coronary syndrome or ACS. So every acute coronary syndrome merits attention if we have the intention of saving lives. What is the stress test? What I'm now trying to do is, as Ajit said, I'm trying to answer the common questions, and I'm trying to give a simple explanation to the various tests that we do. So stress test is an electrocardiogram which is done while walking. So the patient is on the treadmill, he's connected to the ECG machine, and it is similar to taking a car for a test drive and checking in all 4 or 5 gears whether the car is performing well. How much does it cost? Not much. 1200 to 1400 rupees. No preparation is required. You must not do it immediately after food. Is there any danger? Yes, you must stop at the first sign of trouble, at the first sign of chest pain, and rest yourself. What is an echo test? It is also called 2D echo. It tells us about the valves of the heart and the functioning and pumping of the heart. So a commonly used terminology is ejection fraction or the percentage of pumping of the heart. It costs about 1200 to 1500. No preparation is required. And it is completely safe because it does not put you to any stress, and it is a non-invasive test. Another commonly performed test is the thallium test. Now, what is the thallium test? The thallium test is something in which a radioactive material is put inside the body, and depending on where in the heart the radioactive material reaches, we can judge whether that portion of the heart is viable or not. Viable means alive or not, functioning or not, and whether it receives the blood supply or not. It is a complex test, and we often joke and call it unclear medicine rather than nuclear medicine, because it can be interpreted in different ways. It costs about 10,000 to 12,000. The danger is it uses radioactive material, and it is also like a stress test, and it can put the heart under strain. It is not required in every patient. Doing the test when not needed causes the confusion. Often a patient comes and says, please do a thallium test for me. I don't suggest that we should do a thallium test just because somebody else in my family got it done. The decision to do a thallium test should be left to the doctor so that he can interpret the results usefully. Another test that one can perform is a CT angio or a computerized tomographic angiography. It is a CT scan of the heart. It gives a good idea of the possibility of the blockages. However, it is only about 93% accurate. The situations where it is not accurate is sometimes if there is too much calcium, it is not accurate. It costs about 12,000 rupees. The danger is that it uses contrast medicine. It can use up to 200 to 300 ml of dye or contrast medicine, which can affect the kidneys. It is only 93% accurate, and it can cause a false sense of security if it fails to visualize the blockages in the coronary arteries. So once we know what our problems are, what is it that we can do for lifestyle modification? We all know that the following are the important questions. What diet should I have? Whether I can have alcohol or not? Whether I can smoke or not? What is the best exercise for me? And whether obesity is a risk factor. Now, there is a lot of literature available in the media about this. All of us know about it. What I will do is I will just go through the controversies and the paradoxes in this. The message from me is that we do not know everything about the heart disease. So we should not take an aggressive stance towards any one particular modality. Moderation is the best, and we must do everything within moderation. So let us first look at smoking. Smoking in the West, there is a 20% reduction in smoking. And as the incidence of smoker is falling amongst the West, the incidence of heart attacks and strokes is also falling from this reason. However, smoking is increasing in some parts of the world, like South America, Southeast Asia, India. And in these areas, we do have a high incidence of heart attacks. What has changed regarding smoking in the USA is that whilst there is a 20% fall in smoking related heart attacks in the USA. There is a 20% rise in cocaine-related heart attacks in the USA, as several states in the USA are legalizing the use of cocaine and other similar drugs. We are going to see an increased incidence of heart attacks, which is not very fortunate. The battle against heart disease: the more we sweat in peace in the gym, the less we bleed in battle. What is the best exercise? See, the evidence we have is that walking 40 minutes 4 times a week is good enough to give good aerobic exercise. Aggressive gymming can sometimes aggravate heart attacks. The plaque sometimes ruptures by aggressive gymming, and sometimes you've got a paradoxical situation where the person is exercising, and after a bout of heavy exercise, he actually gets a heart attack. Yoga is drawn a lot of attention. Not all yoga is helpful. All forms of aerobic yoga are helpful, but isometric exercises which believe in muscle contraction are probably not that helpful, as they lead to the development of hypertension rather than the relief from hypertension. So a patient, when advised lifestyle modification, came to the doctor and said, "Doc, if I give up drinking, I do not smoke, and I have no girlfriends, will I live to be 100? And the doctor predictably answers, "Well, I don't know if you will live to be 100, but you will certainly feel that you are 100 years old." The message is moderation. There is no one thing that is going to prevent you from getting a heart attack. There is no one thing that is going to prevent you from getting a bypass surgery or an angioplasty. What I sometimes tell my patients is that if you live long enough, you deserve a bypass surgery. And that bypass surgery then adds 20 years, 25 years to your life. I have many patients who get a bypass surgery in their 50s, in their 60s, and then they live up to being 75. And I don't get much time to respond to all invitations from my patients, but their 75th birthday I religiously attend. So alcohol, beer, wine, or whiskey? Well, alcohol probably helps. All the evidence that has been gathered is that people who drink alcohol moderately probably save their heart. We know definitely that alcohol in small amounts is good for the brain because it relaxes you. It is probably okay for the heart, but it is poison for the liver. So one must not consume so much alcohol, and one must not get addicted to it. Moderation, once again, is the key word. Here I've tried to get my message across. Have the odd beer, do not fear. Whenever with your lady you dine, please have some wine. But if you are on vodka, on whiskey, sooner or later it is going to be risky. Cholesterol and heart disease. A lot has been said about cholesterol and heart disease, and I think we spent the last 20 years worrying about cholesterol, doing cholesterol tests, taking anti-cholesterol medicines, till finally the verdict came out that cholesterol is probably not a risk factor for heart disease. Now, this is something that my cardiologist friends still are unwilling to accept, because cholesterol is something that can be treated and they would wish to treat everybody. However, the latest dietary guidelines have accepted that cholesterol is not, high cholesterol is not a risk factor for coronary artery disease. We may qualify that by saying that not a risk factor, provided the other genetic factors are normal. Statins. Statins are drugs given to reduce cholesterol. So which patient qualifies for statins? Obviously, those who have got extremely high cholesterol levels, but people who have had a heart attack or a stroke, people who have undergone angioplasty or bypass surgery, people who have got angina, or the inherited condition of familial hypercholesterolemia, these are the people who are advised to take statins. But here is the statin paradox, that statins do increase calcium in the atheromas, and they do cause increased calcification in the coronary arteries. So then one asks the question, how do they actually seem to help if they increase the calcium? One of the theories for that is that by increasing the calcification into the atheroma, they make the atheroma more rigid. It hardens, it does not rupture easily, and therefore offers a protective effect. But statins have always been in controversy, and they will continue to remain in controversy. Stress. We all know that stress is a cause of cardiac problems, but being human is equivalent to having stress. Nobody can say that you will lead a fruitful lifestyle and not get stress from one thing or the other. So how do you handle stress? Well, continued high levels of stress cause damage. So we must take short holidays. We must play an aerobic team sport so that the stress levels stay low. Ironically, the second biggest stress event in a man's life is planning a family holiday. Obesity. So we've traditionally always targeted the obese. So the moment an obese person walks into a doctor's office, everybody starts saying, oh, lose weight, lose weight, lose weight. Here is the paradox. Whilst it may be that people who are obese have got a higher risk of developing heart disease, people who are obese have got are much safer when they develop heart disease. So there, the prognosis of people who are relatively obese is better if they get a heart attack or if they get any other major illness. This terminology is very often advertised. Bypass the bypass. The therapy that is offered is called chelation therapy. What is chelation? An acid, EDTA, which can probably dissolve calcium in a test tube, is diluted and injected in the blood. It is expected to dissolve the calcium in the coronary arteries. However, that is never the case. It cannot remove calcium from the coronary arteries because we already saw that the calcium in the coronary arteries is embedded in the walls of the coronary arteries. Instead, it removes calcium from the bones and it causes osteoporosis. So chelation therapy is mentioned only to be discouraged. Why do they then claim American FDA approval? The answer is quite simple. As they say in Hindi, crows are black everywhere. Corruption is there not only in India, it's a worldwide phenomenon. Another question that people often come and ask us is, my relative was advised a bypass surgery 10 years ago, but he is still alive without the operation. So was the advice incorrect? The answer is in the statistics. It is like picking only one particular share in an entire portfolio and judging the entire portfolio based on that one particular script. So when a patient has blockages, if an operation is done, 90% of the patients are alive after 10 to 15 years of the operation. We have done several studies, the European study, the CAS study, the veteran study, in which lakhs of people were studied. They were put into two groups, people who underwent surgery In them, the 10-year survival was as high as 90%. When the operation was not done, only 10% were alive at the end of 10 years. And these were the borderline indications for surgery. So for every one patient alive who was advised bypass surgery and did not get it done, 9 people have lost their lives by not following medical advice. Are all plant-based medicines safe? The answer is no. Opium is a plant. So it is a myth that all plant-based medicines, all organic medicines, all natural medicines, all forms of naturopathy are safe. That sadly is not true. So what are the dangers of so-called Ayurvedic or homeopathic medicines? The answer is, see, I'm not targeting any particular medicine. What I am using the word Ayurvedic or homeopathic is as a generic terms for all non-allopathic medicines that are sold by people who are not actually practitioners of Ayurveda or homeopathy. So the commonest problem is that they contain steroids. Sometimes, if they don't contain steroids, they contain heavy metals like gold, silver, or mercury. For instance, I may use the word Chyawanprash because it is a generic name and not a brand name. But Chyawanprash and gold Chyawanprash are advertised as containing silver and gold. Now, these metals, silver and gold, are heavy metals. The body has got no methodology of metabolizing them. So they get accumulated in the liver. So when these heavy metals get accumulated in the liver is stimulated. And as the liver is stimulated, working overtime, the patient feels good. Later on, however, fibrosis develops and liver failure occurs. Recently, one of my close friend's father had lead poisoning from Ayurvedic medicine. So if you want to take Ayurvedic medicine or any such medicine, please get its chemical analysis done. I have got chemical analysis done at least 400 or 500 times, and all the 400 or 500 times I have found steroids in the medicines. Another therapy that is advertised is ECCP. This is extracorporeal counterpulsation. It means that over 30 or 40 one-hour sessions, we tie compression stockings around the legs. These stockings are similar to blood pressure cuffs. They cover the entire leg. And after tying the cuffs, pumping action is done. So this compression helps to move the blood in the muscles of the leg, and it is theorized that it will strengthen the heart. In answer to the question, does it work? The answer is maybe in some cases. The next question, what if my stent gets blocked? Stents do carry a blockage rate of up to 20%. There is more blockage rate in diabetic patients. So what if I get a stent done and the stent gets blocked? Well, the answer is, even if the stent is blocked, we do not need to despair. We can still operate upon the patient. Here, I'm showing the photograph of a patient who has had multiple stents. Later on, the stents were blocked. He developed a myocardial infarction. We've operated upon the patient and removed the stents. It is a massive operation. It is not done very frequently, but if required, it can still be performed with enough margin of safety. So these are few of the other novel treatments that we have done. This person was a constable. He had a very weak heart. We performed beating heart surgery on him using the Impella device. Obviously, Times had some nice things to say about the technique and about Jaslok Hospital. This was another landmark case. This was the first beating heart surgery using the octopus. My team performed the surgery. The inventor of the octopus, Eric Jansen, conducted the workshop. And this lady was 78 years old in 1998. She lived on to 95 years, and the family became very good friends. So, have we conquered heart disease? The answer is yes. The war is won. Individual battles, however, still need to be fought. So here is the case study of one patient. This patient underwent his first CABG in 1984. Dr. John Wright operated him in Jaslok Hospital. This was the first batch of bypass surgeries in India. He had come from England and performed 8 operations. At this time, the patient had a heart attack. He was 44 years old. He underwent the bypass surgery successfully, and he was well 22 years after the bypass surgery. So at the age of 66, in 2006, I operated him for a second time because his vein grafts had become blocked. He underwent the second surgery successfully, and he's still alive at the ripe old age of 81 in the year 2021. So if you look at his case study, he has lived a long, fruitful, useful, active life from the age of 44 to the age of 81 for 40 years. And it is almost as if he had 2 bouts of malaria with 2 hospitalizations of 7 days each. So if you diagnose properly, if the patient comes early for treatment, if he goes through with the treatment, his lifespan is normal and he can conquer heart disease and be a useful survivor and a productive member of the society. My youngest CABG case was a 17-year-old. He used to get chest pain going to school. He had familial hypercholesterolemia. I operated upon him for a total arterial grafting. This is almost 8 years ago. This is a photograph of the patient. The guy in the center is the bypass surgery patient. The gentleman on his left is one of my fellows who has now become a very successful surgeon in Udaipur and performs excellent surgeries. At the other end of the spectrum, this is the oldest patient, heart surgery at 95. The message is there is no need to despair. We are able to give reproducible long-term results with cardiac surgery, and with modern treatment of cardiac surgery, we can have an almost normal lifespan post-operatively. This is the photograph of a small club. All of these patients have had nasty heart attacks. Ajit will understand when I say that they had post-infarct VSD and left ventricular aneurysms. So these patients were all critically ill. They were in the ICU. After the heart attack, we used all possible means to save their lives, and all of them are the survivors. So they had formed a club, and every time I had such a critically ill patient, they would actually come in, they would counsel the relatives, and they say, we know that the odds are stacked against you, but it is worthwhile undergoing cardiac surgery. We had 0 chance of survival, but miracles do happen, and we have all survived. So they would come and they would counsel the patients, and once the patient had his or her surgery, they would come and present them with flowers. So this is my little post-infarct rupture or VSD club. I thank you very much for a patient hearing, and I hope I have done justice to the subject and for this wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Sir, all of us put together can't thank you more, but it's been really a great presentation. I think lots of take-home messages for us at Equirus, and the whole group who's listening to this would. I mean, you have stolen our hearts, if I may say so. Okay, on World Heart Day. So I think that's the best way to describe. I would request if there are any questions from the Equirus people. This would be a good time, maybe about 10 minutes of question answers, so that people can ask questions, if I may allow themselves.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir. We'll go ahead and take some time for the questions. Just a reminder to all the employees, please be sure to unmute yourself while asking the question. I guess we have a first question by Mr. Satish Upadhyay. Can you please unmute yourself and please ask your question, sir?
Hi, sir. Good evening.
Satish.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Satish.
Yeah, it was a very insightful session, sir, for us. So I would like to ask, sir, how does COVID impact on the heart health, sir?
COVID has several impacts on the heart. As you know, one of the problems of COVID is that there is an increased tendency of the blood to clot. So anyway, clotting is the major problem in heart disease. If the arteries clot, you get a heart attack. Over and above that, COVID has the tendency for blood to clot in the legs, in the veins of the leg. And this clot can then travel to the lungs and create what is called pulmonary embolism. So that has been the major impact of COVID as far as the heart is concerned. We did fear when COVID started that, like other viral infections, COVID would also affect the heart and cause myocarditis or inflammation of the heart muscle. However, we were happy to note that we did not get many cases of COVID actually involving the heart and causing a myocardial problem.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That was helpful.
Smita, ma'am. Hello.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for such an informative session. My question is somewhat similar to Satish's question, that on stress relief medicines. So what happens after COVID recovery? Physicians, they they suggest that it is usual to have slight chest pain, and they usually suggest taking stress relief medicines. So my question is it safe to take stress relief medicines? And not just stress relief medicines, any sort of pain relief medicines, do they have any side effects, or what should we do?
Pain, the major impact of COVID is, as you say, a form of, let's use the word depression for want of a better word. And that depression has to be treated, because depression in any form is not just an imaginary illness. It is a real illness, and it can really impact the health of people. So we must treat the stress associated with a post-COVID syndrome. We must take the relevant medicines. However, we must take them not because a friend advised them, not because my relative is taking them and I will take them, but on the advice of a doctor, because he can then correlate the requirement or the interactions of the medicines with any other medicine or clinical condition that the particular patient might be suffering from. The second part of the question as to whether painkillers are harmful, the answer is there is no medicine that is not harmful. All medicines have to be metabolized by the body, and if taken in the wrong dosage or in the excessive dosage or taken in a condition where the patient is immune compromised, they can result in complications. Paracetamol is a very simple and safe medicine. It is available round the counter, but if taken in excess, paracetamol can cause severe liver failure as well. So even paracetamol does not escape the scrutiny of being a completely safe medicine. There is no completely safe medicine. So medicine should only be taken when necessary and strictly on the advice of a doctor and for the duration that the doctor advises the medicine for.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Welcome. Welcome.
Seems like we are getting a lot of hand raises and a question also in the chat box. We have one question from Mr. Vikram. Can you please unmute yourself and ask a question, sir?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. My query, thank you for this enlightening session. My question is, does the level of stress anxiety increase the risk of heart complications?
Could I have the question again?
Yeah, I'm just repeating the question. My question is the level of stress, anxiety, does it increase the risk of heart complications?
Well, yes, of course it does. There is actually a syndrome called the broken heart syndrome. So a completely normal heart, if faced with severe stress, usually bereavement in the family or loss of a very close relative, the heart can actually literally shatter, and it is called the broken heart syndrome. So excess level of stress results in excess secretion of hormones in the body, which are extremely strong chemicals, and the damage they can do is extensive. So yes, high levels of stress can create really, really severe damage.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I would like Hemant sir to ask his question.
Yeah, good evening, sir. My question is with respect to this, can our eating habits cause the heart symptoms?
Well, yes. In fact, what I tried to bring into the presentation was the paradox that everybody keeps on blaming eating habits for heart problems. However, the connection of cholesterol with the heart is tenuous. The connection of anti-cholesterol medicines with heart disease is tenuous. And now the connection of obesity with heart disease is tenuous. So the answer is in the common saying that you can eat anything, but if you eat your food like medicine in small amounts, then later on in life, you won't have to eat medicines in a big amount like your food. So moderation is the key word.
Got it, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks.
Yeah. Ironically, the brain needs cholesterol for its functioning. So if you completely starve the brain of cholesterol, there are fears that it might result in dementia. So there is a link between statin use and cholesterol starvation and dementia as well as Alzheimer's disease. However, there is a huge pharma lobby that is let's say, that's very secretive about publishing of results until they become completely obvious. So I would still use statins with a little bit of caution, but I would advise moderation to everybody.
Got it, sir. Thank you so much.
Bhavesh, sir, if you can ask your question, please.
Sure, Shruti. Dr. Mehra, this was a very insightful presentation. Thank you so much for your time to spend with us. My question is with respect to exercise. You mentioned that exercise is very important. And at the same time, we have seen a lot of these cases which you mentioned about the underage guys or the young guys getting kind of, getting this heart attack, etc., was by virtue of exercise. And now there is obviously a paradox over here that sometimes you need to push your body to kind of get to a new level, and at the same time, you also need to listen to your body if there is something really worse going on. So how does one differentiate whether the signal which you're getting from the body, you really need to push the body because it's lazy, or it is a really warning signal that you please stop whatever you're doing? So how do you differentiate on that? Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, Bhavesh, thank you for your question and for the compliments. This is that story of the early bird gets the worm. And the corollary to it, that it is the early worm that gets picked by the bird. So everything has got a counter to it. Now, but the question is good because it is insightful. Now, when young athletes get a heart problem, we can broadly divide them into three parts. One is that these people had a coronary blockage, which was undetected, and the severe exercise broke a plaque and resulted in a massive heart attack. Now, when World War II heroes who lost their lives, they underwent postmortems, it was found that they were asymptomatic. They used to run 20 miles a day. They used to they were involved in all forms of war exercise, but they had bad left mainstem disease. There was 25%, 30%, up to 50% blockage in the left mainstem. So that is one group of people who have got undetected coronary artery disease, and usually this is familial. So we can actually go ahead and get a gene testing done and identify these mutants in the gene. So for instance, if somebody in your family, say somebody wants to do the decathlon or somebody wants to be a javelin thrower, you can see our Neeraj Chopra's level of fitness, So you must do a gene testing in your, if somebody close to you, or well, even if somebody is not close to you, if somebody is your national level athlete, he must be gene tested prior to subjecting him to extreme levels of fitness. So that is one thing. The second type of people are a small group of people who get arrhythmias. Arrhythmia means the rhythm of the heart. See, the heart has got a pacemaker, and there is an electrical signal in the heart. Arrhythmia is a short circuit in the signal. So there are some people who are prone to these short signals. And this footballer, Eriksson, and there is, I believe, one baseball player in the USA as well, who had this arrhythmia, and that was the cause of the misfortune in these two people. So having an arrhythmia, and arrhythmias are common in the young, amazingly, they are common in teenage girls as well. So arrhythmias is another cause of problems in athletes. The third problem is where there is no arrhythmia. There is actually no disease, but this person has run a marathon, and at the end of the marathon, he has collapsed, and we call it a heart attack. Now, that is because his muscles have produced lactic acid, or his electrolyte levels have changed dramatically. He has not hydrated himself well, and the problem or the collapse has occurred because of electrolyte or metabolic aberrations. So these three different syndromes we see amongst heart attacks in athletes, which is why sports medicine is now developing as a separate specialty, and it can guide you as to how much exercise one can do safely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mehra.
Thank you.
Appreciate the answer.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Doctor. Mr. Bharat Sali, can you please ask your question?
Thank you, doctor, for taking your time. So, doctor, just wanted to understand, a couple of people do have issues like vein thrombosis, and that too mainly into the feet. So that sort of issues can be a cause of heart attack.
Could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah. So a couple of people are observed to have vein thrombosis in their feet. So could that be a signal for a heart attack?
Yeah. See, that is the question that I was alluding to. That is the syndrome that I was alluding to when I talked about deep vein thrombosis. So in the legs, there are two systems. One is the arterial system and one is the venous system. The venous system also pumps blood at a high pressure, and blood from the veins goes directly to the heart. If a clot develops in the vein, this clot will travel directly to the heart. This is called pulmonary embolism. So it is not a heart attack, it's a pulmonary embolism, but it can result in sudden death. So the answer to your question is yes.
Right, sir. And the second one, I just wanted to clarify on. So we have heard of many people just taking blood thinner, even including aspirin, at the time of some heart disease or some heart attack feeling. So is it safe to do? And even we have heard many people just taking it occasionally just to for as a blood thinner. So is it something good practice to have?
There are those who believe that 75 milligrams of aspirin should be taken every day by everybody over the age of 40. Now, aspirin does have side effects. So the commonest side effect obviously is bleeding. So they would bleed from piles or bleed from here, from the gums, etc. The second commonest side effect of aspirin is that it causes gastritis and it can cause a gastric ulcer. But the one side effect of aspirin that is not very well known in India is the fact that it can exacerbate asthma. So I see a lot of patients who have been taking aspirin and also taking Asthalin and the asthma pump. And nobody seems to have discovered that aspirin is the cause of the asthma. So once again, no medicine without fully understanding its side effects. No medicine is completely safe. So always read all the side effects of the medicine. Always ask your doctor that I have read about this side effect. Will it happen to me? And nowadays you can always say that I read it on Google and I'm worried about it. So can you solve this problem? So please, any medicine taken for a long time, please do ask your doctor whether it has any side effects and whether, and I think all of us should do a Google search and always catch hold of any side effects of the medicines. And amazingly, you find that you may be suffering from that side effect.
Right, doctor. But still, on the later part, if someone takes aspirin just at the time of when someone is feeling heavy-hearted, is it something safe to do? Because it could work as a blood thinner at that time if someone is having a heart attack. Meantime, they are traveling to a hospital or something.
The answer to that question is a thumping and resounding yes. Because when we looked at our slides, we saw that the completion of the blockage is by soft blood clot. So if at that stage, we can manage to somehow get rid of the blood clot, then the artery will partially open and it can save lives. So aspirin or clopidogrel, or there are a few other blood thinners now, is the first line of treatment for heart attacks. And the idea is that if the patient bleeds, he bleeds. Maybe 1 in 1,000 patients will bleed and have a bleeding side effect. But for every one patient that may have a side effect, 30 patients' lives will be saved. The correct percentage is 0.3 people have side effects or major side effects, and 30 or 3% lives are saved. So it is a 300-fold cost-benefit ratio. So yes, the answer to the question is yes. So it's always good to have aspirin in your pocket or in your medicine cabinet. And if somebody has got a heart attack, give them the medicine. The only problem would be if you missed the heart attack and he had a cerebral bleed, but that would be a small percentage of cases. And as I said, that the cost-benefit ratio is sufficiently high for us to recommend taking of aspirin.
Sure. Thank you, doctor.
Questions from their side. Are women at from Kavita ma'am, we have a question. Are women at a higher risk for heart disease than men?
$1 million question. That was the one thing that there was a one set of slides that I removed from the presentation just because I didn't want the presentation to become excessively long. So two aspects to this. Women in the childbearing age have high levels of estrogen in the blood, and estrogen is normally protective against heart disease. So women, like everywhere else, are the favored class. They are God's favorite. So the God has designed them to be protected against heart disease. So that's the way God has designed women. You know, he would, by design, God or whoever is the supreme power did not want children to be left motherless, you know. So till they are in the fertile age, so till the age of 55, till the menopause, there are high levels of estrogen which protect women. Shortly after we call it post-menopause, shortly after this reproductive age is over, the protective effect of estrogen goes away. And as the protective effect of estrogen goes away, we see a high incidence of heart disease and heart attacks amongst women. Now, these are the visible facts. But if you go a little bit deep into the problem, which I think is the value of the question, the value of the question is that it is presumed that women are protected against myocardial infarction. It is also presumed that since several women may not be working, adequate resources are not devoted to their health or their well-being. So heart disease is underdiagnosed and undertreated in women. So that is a crucial problem. We need to solve this problem, and this problem exists even in Western societies. So there have been huge articles on these, and so we must protect women against undiagnosed and untreated heart problems.
Thank you so much, sir. One last question, Mr. Weber, if you can, Weber, sir.
Yeah, hi,
Sorry.
Dr. Mehra, very, very good evening, and thank you so much for the informative session.
Good
My
evening,
question
Weber.
is bicuspid valve something which should be worried? I mean, we should be worried of, or is it something which is normal, having a bicuspid valve?
Yeah. So this is a very, very highly technical question, but good, because he's talking about there are 4 valves in the heart. Of this, one of the valves, the aortic valve, normally has got 3 cusps or 3 doors. It's tripartite. Okay. Now, in a certain percentage of cases, instead of 3 cusps, there are 2 cusps. So the valve is inherently stenotic. That means inherently the valve over a period of time will block, because something that should have 3 doors to open or 3 windows to open, now has only 2. So eventually it will become, it will block, and it will become, we call, the technical term is stenotic. That means it will be obstructive to forward flow of blood. But once again, the question is very intelligent. See, I'm talking to bankers, so they don't ask a question without there being an undertone to the question. So the undertone to the question is the valve becomes bicuspid because there is a genetic abnormality. So the association of the bicuspid aortic valve is with a general thinning of the major arteries of the body. So when such a situation arises, these arteries can rupture. So one of the most severe events that can happen to a person is the rupture of the main artery of the body. The rupture of the main artery of the body, and that is called aortic dissection. So bicuspid aortic valve is genetically associated with rupture of the aortic valve, or rupture of the aorta, or a thinning of the aorta. May I just mention here that I have been involved in some original research on this with an Indian scholar who is in Houston, and she has done some incredible work on bicuspid aortic valve and its association with spontaneous aortic rupture.
Sure.
I hope the
Thank you.
question
Thank
is
you so much.
answered fully.
Yes, absolutely, doctor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doctor. It looks like we have covered all our questions. I would like Bhumika ma'am to please conclude the session. And thank you so much, sir.
Great. Thank you, Ajit and Shruti, and a special thanks to Dr. Mehra for taking his time out and giving us insights on how to take care of our heart health. We will surely follow your instructions and take care of our heart. And at the end, as it is rightly said, life is more beautiful and more fun when you have a heart that beats right. Thank you, everybody, for this session.
Thank you, Bhumika. Thank you, Sneha. Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you, doctor. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate the same.
Thank you. Thank you, Ajit.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.